Got it.
Got it.
Drink up, me hearties, yo ho.
There's quite a few people watching these afterwards. I mean, maybe some of these views come in at the time, but
Why isn't this showing up as being live? Okay, there
Okay,
we go.
what's
that's
happening?
yours, I think.
Oh no. Okay. There we go. Look at that. We are
I get to, I don't get to sign
live
because I have to sign in. I'm not cool enough because I don't remember my sign in.
Oh no.
What's up, Patreon people or YouTube people?
It's too long. You got to trim it.
I know. Well, it's gonna take a while for everybody to come in, but I noticed that everybody's saying, "Oh, ahoy!" Smash that like button, everybody.
Ahoy,
too pretty.
friends. Thank you guys for joining us.
That
Bob's
version is
going
just too pretty.
crazy
It's so
over
like,
here.
Yeah, and that was the end of it.
yo-ho.
The end. We don't want the end. I need to cover up because the delay is throwing me off. All right.
Let's get some Sousa.
Guys, what do you guess I said on the intro this time?
I think I know.
Hannah, you're killing me. Jennifer, oh Lord, the soundboard. Everyone has to brace themselves now for the soundboard.
We pillage and plunder, we rifle and loot. Drink up, me hearties,
Yo ho!
We kidnap and ravage, we don't give a hoot. Drink up, me hearties, yo ho.
It's too long. It goes.
You don't like the other thing I like to this music I like to use.
It just goes on too long.
Hey, Matilda, Carolyn, Hannah, Rachel. Hey, everybody, smash that like button. Close out the
Or the dislike.
or the dislike, either one.
I think we want that.
It's still going. Still going.
I'm almost done.
You guys are all wrong. I opened with Nihal.
Did you really?
We'll find out.
Oh, I need to know. I feel like you do something that it's Matilda. Hi, smashed. Jennifer Bronson Warren has smashed the like button.
Well, she just said smash. She didn't say the like button.
Well, I said smash the like button.
And I
No,
said
she
dislike.
smashed her computer. This is not good.
She didn't like the soundtrack. Fine. You guys are jerks. Welcome in, everybody, to the live show.
Do you know how on YouTube it offers up like suggestions of things you want to watch? On my suggestion list over here in the corner is Spaceballs. Yeah, that makes me real excited.
On what?
On the side on YouTube.
Oh,
On
it gives you
YouTube. YouTube
suggestions
wants you to
for
watch
other
Spaceballs
videos.
on
but you're not
YouTube?
signed in.
I know. So I'm gonna watch Spaceballs while you guys do this.
That's probably for the best.
Challenge the like button to a game of Super Smash Brothers. That's a way to put it.
You know,
Hannah
it
Lewis.
is pretty good too because I had a Mel Brooks quote earlier, even though you guys didn't like it. So
Did you at least not say "huge" again?
oh, we'll find out.
I hate that I always have to pee when you do the intro.
Go ahead. All right, everybody, welcome in. Go ahead and smash that soundboard. Destroy it so there's nothing left of it.
Don't listen to her.
Shout out to Kaylin. Okay.
Enough soundboard fun.
You're the last
Kaylin
person I
doesn't
expected to
like
be the
soundboard.
person
She wants me to
say
smash the soundboard.
that. That was my whole joke, my guy.
I thought you said smash her computer.
No, that was somebody else.
Moments later, I said smash the soundboard, and then I said, that's for you, Kaylin.
Oh. Haha.
I wish that were your regular laugh.
That didn't really fit there. It was a wedge. It was wedged in. Yo ho, yo ho. All right, give everybody a couple more minutes to come in and Song makes me want to drink beer and smiles from Brian Blanchett. Alrighty. Hey guys, if you're in the YouTube and you want to see the hour of nonsense that we do before this, make sure that you join the Patreon. It's $5 a month. You get every episode ad free in your own feed on your regular. I don't know how it works. It goes on your regular podcast player, right?
Yeah, it goes. You can, yeah, yeah. If you get it on Patreon, it will tell you how to make sure you get it wherever you usually listen to your podcasts.
Yeah, so it comes up like a normal thing for $5, and you get the hour-long video pre-show every week. Or you can listen on the app, as Hannah Lewis says, on the Patreon app.
Yes, also true.
Also, if you guys on Patreon I sent out a shit ton of shirts this week, and I got a few emails when people got them. Like, post those suckers on social media that you got your shirts.
I got my hat.
Oh, I'm out of hats. I sent out a bunch of hats too, and there's 2 people that I owe hats that I didn't get their hats to because I ordered them and they're like 2 months out.
And this hat's from like 87.
Yeah, that's the old school. That's the OG.
Do you know Kickboxer came out in 1989? It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
As good as Spaceballs.
What does that have to do with anything?
It doesn't have. I just thought it would come out.
I'm always interested. Yeah, I will say that Kelly does an amazing job with the outtakes because she strings together, she'll clip together a montage from the outtakes that is
so
like,
good.
it's like its own little song. Like she takes pieces from all over. It's not just like you're hearing one little, well, sometimes if there's one little section that she wants to just play, but
usually
times
it's like it's from
a bunch of different stuff.
The whole episode, a bunch of little clips together.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Years ago has a hole in the armpit. Kristen says her shirt from years ago has a hole in the armpit. Can I buy a new one? We've never sold them. I keep saying this, but we need to come up with whatever the next design is and put out a t-shirt, a merch.
I wanted an employee shirt.
Well, what shirts are you talking about that you sent out then?
Just the green Patreon shirts, Truth and Justice Army shirts.
Got it.
I want a team.
Those are not for sale. Those are only for patrons.
I want a Team Zach.
When do I get
shirt.
my green t-shirt? Am I not at a high enough level?
Are you at the $15 level?
Yes.
Oh, all right. Should we start the show? We start the show, right?
Great. Yes.
I mean, let's just check that like count. Where are we at here? 35 likes. Oh man, 81 watching, 35 likes. We can get that up. Just real.
Why am I so red?
Just real quick, huh?
Why am I so red?
You're wearing a red shirt. I don't know.
You're
I
red
feel like
too.
I look red.
You look very red in here.
I just look yellow. You look normal, but I look yellow, so you think you look red.
Oh my god! The other day I was doing a true crime binge interview, and Erica there was something about the lighting in a room. Like I'm like, are you dead? Like she looked like her skin just looked gray. It was like this horrible lighting in some office that she was sitting in.
You know what color neither of us are?
Celadon. Shout out to Celadon. Both kinds.
What color is Celadon, Zach?
I don't know. You have to look it up.
No, you have to subscribe to the Patreon.
Oh, yeah. You have to subscribe to the Patreon.
Yeah.
You'll learn what color Celadon.
Yeah, and that's
and who was right.
Basically, all the benefit you'll get from that is just an hour of us working out what color Celadon is. Bob is blue. I look blue. I feel like I look red in my.
Ooh, I need to. I wish I wasn't dyslexic. I can read faster.
Distinguished.
Yeah. I didn't read that as distinguished.
What did you think it said?
What? You thought that was an insult?
Yeah, it was definitely an insult at first.
Zach looks extinguished.
All right, here we go. Michelle, I tried. He won't budge. Was that red is powerful? Use the power. I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to figure out what's happened to convince him to let you start early. I don't know. That's a conversation that I'm not a part of, so I'll just stay out of it.
No,
Ready to start the show. Here we go.
Okay, great.
I have no idea. I really wish I knew what you did for the intro. Because if it was, ahoy,
Oh, no.
I'm definitely playing the soundboard.
Oh, no.
What would you do if I was Nihao?
I feel like that would offend somebody.
Why?
I don't know. Because everything offends somebody.
Well, that's true.
That's the right
I'm
answer.
terrified of everything
That's the right
always
answer.
offending
That's
somebody.
Okay, everybody, we are back. There is a lot to talk about today for episode 31, Tiffany Part 2. But before we do that, I hear there might be some true crime binge news that we all need to know.
Nope, not at all. It's
Bullshit.
It's true
Really?
crime bullshit
Oh,
news.
Oh, true crime bullshit. Oh, true crime bullshit. Josh Hallmark. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Let
sort
me
of.
take that. Let me go ahead and take that again.
Man, she came in good too.
Yeah, that was a
Let me
good
go ahead and take that
intro.
again. I
Let's
heard.
go,
I
Kelly. We're gonna go ahead
assumed.
and
Yeah.
reset.
Click, click, click. Kelly, click, click, click. Shout out to True Crime Bullshit, which I totally listened to. So I just when you said you had to do a true crime, and then I just heard binge in my head instead of bullshit. Great. But before we get started, I hear there is some true crime bullshit. Josh Hallmark's fantastic podcast. Some news that we need to share.
Yeah, there is. It's not so much news as I probably should have told you what you were reminding me of. But it was Josh has a new season of True Crime Bullshit coming out.
Yes.
And he sent me over a promo clip to listen to. And I thought it was great. So just Josh is a good friend of ours, good friend of the show. So at the end of this episode, after the credits and after any bloopers, if Kelly puts any bloopers in this week, there will be a trailer for the new season of True Crime Bullshit. Sounds really good. I can't wait to listen to the next season. And hopefully you guys do too. But if you have ever listened to Josh's show, or even if you haven't, stay tuned through the credits and listen to that promo. And you're going to want to listen to it when you hear it.
No, I'm excited for it. I'm a big fan.
Yeah,
I
me
am too. I've listened to every season twice because there's so much information.
Yeah,
And
I
I'm
haven't
teacher's
done
pet.
that.
Goodbye. Did I get the highest grade of this conversation?
You did. I'm sure
Great.
Josh, I'm sure is listening to this, and you're his favorite now.
Hi, Josh. Okay, great. So let's get into our episode this week. Tiffany part 2. 2 more interviews from Tiffany. One not too long after the first one we sort of listened to that you broke down for us. And then one that happened in 2018. So a lot of different stuff happening across those 3 episodes.
Right. What were your guys' takeaways?
The big one, and I know that there's some listener questions about it, but the big one that I took away was the possibility of this mystery bank account.
Right.
I think that was huge for me to know that they think this is out there.
And by the way, I've seen no indication that that's true. It was very weird to me when I heard that. It's like Ron is telling her that there's this very particular amount that's in another account at the same time when they're like can't afford to pay their bills. Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know what
Definitely
that was
questions
about.
That. Yeah. Well, we'll try to get into it. I mean, I guess the spoiler alert is that when we get down to those questions, the answers probably will be we don't know yet. But that's definitely a big one. The other one that I just wanted to ask to get out of the way is because this is probably a really simple answer, and I'm stuck on something so small. But didn't we hear that Ron, like people talk in past episodes, in past interviews, people talked about Ron building the house with his own 2 hands, right? Wasn't there sort of this, that's Ron's house, he built it with his 2 hands. So what is the mortgage for? Like, I know that's probably really, I've never built my own house, so I don't know what you're paying mortgage on. If you are supplying all of the materials and you were building the house, are you paying mortgage for the land? Like, what's the mortgage for?
Well, and the materials.
Sorry if that's a dumb question.
No, it's not. But yeah, I mean, so by building it yourself, you're saving labor costs for the house, but that's not the largest part of what it costs to build a house. The most expensive part is all of the materials to build that. So you're buying the land, and I'm sure he could have built it with his own 2 hands and still had a contractor come dig and pour the foundation and maybe some do roofs. But yeah,
so the loan is
Well, there would also have to be, I mean, typically a buyout process through a divorce as well.
Yeah.
So she would owe Ron a portion of money if she wants to keep that house.
Well, it depends. I mean, I'm very I'm quite an expert on divorces. But
I understand. Well, whatever you're going to say, but I do know this is a thing that happens.
Yeah. Well, there's a settlement process that goes along, right? So typically, there's kind of a balance sheet. So say it could be that that they owe as much on the house as it's worth, and it's like, well, you keep the house and you keep the debt for the house, or it could be there's quite a bit of equity in the house, so you keep the house and the debt. But since you got this equity, that means you're going to get less of my pension, so that I don't have to buy it out, or so there's a juggling of assets and liabilities when a divorce like that happens. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a buyout. But yeah, so you could still, I mean, the mortgage would be, so say for example, if I was going to build a house myself, say a house that would cost here, around where we live might cost $200,000 to buy a new home. If I were to be my own general contractor, I could probably build that house for, instead of 200,000, I could probably build it for 150,000. But there's
Okay.
still a big chunk of money there, even
Got
if
it.
I was the one swinging the hammer.
Okay. Even if I was the one swinging the hammer, I just had to let that sit there for a second. Big tough guy. Okay. All right. Zach, do you have anything else you want to talk about before we get into some questions?
Honestly, I'm sure I kind of saw some listener questions, so I'm sure they're all answered or they're all going to be there. So I'd rather let the listeners talk.
One thing that I just want to touch on, just because I want to hear your guys' reaction to it. And I know there's a ton of questions about what Tiffany said about her call with Robert.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that jumped out to me when I was listening to it is she said that Javier called Becky from a payphone that night of the murder.
Yeah, that was my first question. I loaded up. Mm-hmm.
Yep, I have it written down as well, but I knew that was a question.
Yeah, if that's the first one you got written up, then we'll
It
just
is.
get right into that question. Ask away.
Okay, great. Well, this comes from Kristen, but not the only person to notice it and bring it up. Is this the first time? We heard that Javi said he stopped at a payphone to check on Becky because he was worried. That was a big, what? And also, why are we hearing it from this source as the first time we're hearing it? It was just very strange.
The tricky part is that we don't know if it's true. Right. And I'm not saying that like in any way at all, not even suggesting that like Tiffany was lying about it.
Right.
But could be that she was misremembering it. The hardest part about the whole thing is, again, the home phone records are very incomplete, because we definitely do not see a call like in the home phone records we have that the police got. There is no incoming call from any number that night that could have been a payphone. And they didn't pull Tiffany's record, at least not what I have. They didn't pull Tiffany's records. But that's actually related to stuff from 2 weeks ago. It doesn't have to do with the payphone, but obviously they didn't pull the payphone records either. So that's all we have is Tiffany saying Javier. Now, if that's true, it certainly it begs the question, why didn't Javier tell police that he made that call from the payphone?
Right.
But he told her. And then also it kind of changes our timeline, right? It changes, where he was at. Presumably in that area, there would be the payphone, maybe right there by the fire station that's close to.
Well, I don't know, because didn't she say outside Hemet?
Yeah, and that's why I think she might be confused, because he was calling her from. Well, maybe there's not cell coverage in Hemet, because the towers he was hitting were in Anza and Aguanga, or Guanga. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. But if you kind of look on the map, as 74 heads past Pinyon Pines, it kind of forks. And it goes, I think it's north, it goes up to Hemet, and to the west, it goes to Anza and then Aguanga, in that direction. So maybe there are cell towers there, but there isn't a cell tower in Hemet. I don't know.
So just to interject for a second, one of the listeners in the live is asking, how do we know that the records are truly incomplete for the home? And I know we've answered this before, but if you want to touch on that really quick.
Oh, because I mean, we absolutely know that, because there are calls on other people's records. So for example, Robert, we see a call on Robert, a couple calls on Robert's cell phone records that show that he received a call from the Friedli's landline. But when we look at the Friedli's landline record, those calls aren't there. They don't exist. So so we know 100% that it's incomplete.
We just don't know how incomplete, which is maddening.
Right. Exactly.
And the other thing that I don't think that if the payphone thing is accurate, I don't think it's that weird, knowing the timeline, knowing that there's no cell phone service. I mean, I definitely used a payphone in this era. I mean, you're out and about, you're trying to do things. So payphones weren't what they are today, where you can't even find them.
Right.
But it's the whole idea that he did not bring it up. That's what's concerning.
Well, and then it just, like I said, I don't know that it makes a huge difference, but it's just in the timeline of the calls, and then her saying, well, don't come because it'll be awkward for Robert, or whatever that situation was. And then like, when in there did he then stop and make a payphone call? I don't.
Yeah.
Again, it's hard to say, like, if that's true, it means this.
Right.
But it's something that's very intriguing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just very quickly touching on this, Sarah wanted to know if we know how long after the murders it was until Vicky's body was positively identified, since that's something that, that first phone call with Tiffany was really hard. I mean, we already know that it's so incredibly heartbreaking and so difficult and so stressful for any of us who have just lost a loved one who may even have died of natural causes. Like, it can be so hard and so challenging. I'll give it a second. Feel free to not worry about this, Kelly. Whatever the sound you made was, it wasn't as loud for us as you.
Oh, it wasn't the sound. It wasn't the sound. He just dumped his fucking water.
I see. Perfect time. Perfect subject matter for you to drop your water. Really, really
I'm
good
so
time for you to
sorry
drop
that I
your
was
water.
laughing while
It's
I was trying
talking about when people die that we love. Yeah. No,
Right.
that's cool.
Oh, I don't know how to fix that in the audio. I reached over and smacked the bottle, and then there was a splash sound afterwards.
The splash sound is what got me. Oh, sorry.
Listen, this is just real life. This is what happens in real life. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. Sometimes you spill your water and there's a fantastic splat sound. I'm just going to start that over again. Does that work?
That'd be good. I want to point out, though, the genius, if you remember me telling you last week, that I decided to start using this little slide out shelf that's not on the same level as the electronics to keep my water. I just saved the electronics.
Good for you. Good for you.
Sorry, go ahead, Jana, if you want to retake that again. Apologize to Kelly, the listeners.
Sorry, everybody.
I was trying to hold it together.
Yeah. That whole first call with Tiffany, one of the things that really stuck with me, and I'm sure it stuck with a lot of people, was just how difficult it is when you lose someone, even of natural causes, even when it's expected. Sometimes there's just a mountain of stuff you have to take care of. I've been through that, and I know how hard it is. And knowing that she was grappling with all of that and couldn't get a death certificate, and all of that was just dragging out, is when she said, I think I listened to her at that episode a couple times, and she said something like, it's not too fun to have to do that. She sort of undersold it, and my heart just broke for her. I thought, I can't believe this, young woman is having to deal with all of this, and just, to have to be told, like, we just don't know. Like, it could take months. So do we know how long it did actually take for that process to be, that part of it to be complete, so she could start dealing with a mountain of stuff?
I don't remember the date that they were identified off the top of my head, but it was a while. Because I think I remember correctly, they had an easier time with Vicky, because they had the sisters all right there giving, or daughters there giving DNA samples. But I know there was they were tracking down they talked to his son Robbie, and then like his sister that they were getting. It was all done through DNA, and it took a while. And along those lines, I've seen a lot of comments, and I know people have different thoughts on it, but I'll let you get through I'm sure there's questions about it. I wouldn't talk about like Tiffany canceling the phones. Do you have that on your list?
Kind of. There was really only one question about that, but I didn't. I think it was after I had prepped everything. I just happened to see it in passing this morning, so I don't know that I have something specific about when she canceled them.
Yeah,
what that meant and all that. Yeah.
I was because and maybe that's what I saw, but I saw some posts of people saying like, why would she cancel the phones? Why would? And I don't know what you guys think, but I didn't find that odd. So like,
oh, it's not odd at all.
I'm Tiffany in my family, right? I'm the one that if something happened to my parents, I have two brothers, 100%, I'm the one that's going to have to take care of everything. Right. And I'm the type of personality that would start going through list and checking things off. Like we would, because you hear, I think it's LeClaire she's talking to, and she says, well, I shut the phones off. And he said, well, why'd you do that? And she said, why wouldn't I do that?
Yes.
And and I know there were some people that were like, well, they were kind of like, why would you do that when there's obviously an investigation going on? But when I heard it, I heard the exact opposite. I was like, that's exactly what I would have. I would be like, okay,
right.
We've got stuff that we have to deal with as a state. We have things that have to take care of. we don't need to continue paying for phones when we don't have the phones anymore, and the people that own the phones are deceased. So let's cancel that. We can shut that off.
And she made it pretty clear that she's tried to get a hold of somebody to see.
Right.
She said, I tried to call the lead detective. He hasn't called me back.
Right.
To step back for a
Unfortunately,
second.
LeClaire was a lead detective, so I don't know if that means that she was ever trying to call him or she thought Bump and Sarah was or what. But
June 6, 2007 is when there was a conference.
Not till June of the following year.
That's a really long time.
It took a long time.
Oh,
And like I
that's
said,
so
and
hard.
Tiffany was the one that had to take care of paying, you heard she's the one that's taking care of paying their bills, and because there's no death certificate, that becomes very problematic. And so if she can check a thing off the list, I'm sure that she did. So it's too bad, because what we lost, and the questions that I was wondering if people were asking is, because people are like, well, don't they have the records? Yeah, they can still get the call logs and the text message logs, but by canceling the service, what we lost was access to the voicemails and access to the actual texts, as far as what and apparently you can, once the account is disabled, that information is gone. So had she not canceled them, they could have looked at the actual text messages and seen what they said, and they could have remotely been able to listen and retrieve the voicemails that were left on that night to see what was going on. But because she canceled it, that information was gone. On that same token, like, if anybody is to be at fault there, it's that's the first that day one. Let's look at, we need to find out text messages, phone, all that stuff.
And who is in charge of all of this in the family? Because that person we need to be in a ton of contact with, not weeks and weeks later. We find out that she's been trying to reach them and they're not getting back to her.
No one would call her back.
They're not getting back to her, of all people. They're not getting back to her. It's shocking.
Yeah. So I just want to make clear on record, like, I know it's frustrating and it bothers me too, but I don't in any way fault Tiffany for shutting those lines off, because like I said, I would do the exact same thing. I would, you're grieving, you're going through all that, but at some point, again, like I said, that's me and my family. Someone's going to have to step up and start taking care of business. And if that person is you, like, I'm just that I'm the same way. I would start checking things off the list. So this is done. I don't have to deal with this anymore.
I'm an only child. I just went through this. So
yeah,
that's exactly what we do. And by the way, it's a thing that makes you feel like you have some control in the world of anything. So it's a thing that sort of gives you a sense of like, I'm doing something, like I'm moving forward in some way, because all feels so daunting and impossible. So no, I feel really terrible for her that all of this happened. There's a lot of conversation about, the sort of credibility, I'll say, of the things that were being said in some of the interviews. In particular, more emphasis by listeners has been placed on that final call, feeling like it's very different tonally from those first two calls. Feeling like was some speculation, like, could she have been coached? Where did a bunch of that stuff come from? And a lot of people wondering, like Brian and Jennifer and Kristen, a bunch of other folks, really questioning like where information is coming from, especially the information that seems to be pointing towards Robert, and could it have come from Javier?
Well, I think the first thing that I would want to think about is the fact that we heard them quickly together. You have to realize there's a lot of time that is spread out between these two interviews. So she has a lot of new information that's in her head by the time 2018 comes around.
Yeah, and I don't think that she was coached. I didn't get that from me, just kind of analyzing the interview, the 2018 interview. That's not the impression I got. I definitely got the impression that what happened is what is expected to happen is your memory and your outlook on just about everything is shaped by what's happened over that time. So I've mentioned this before, but we saw this like with Adnan Syed when the police came to the school and started telling people that Adnan's our guy and we know it's him and we're just trying to get this information. Suddenly everybody looked at everything that he ever did in a new light. Well, he did this and he did that, and things that they thought were very innocuous before, but now, he's the guy.
Right.
And so I definitely, I mean, Javier Javier has controlled this narrative from the very beginning to the very end. Everybody, even when we did the interview with Brandon, who's from Newhall, who's from far away from, it's not even from the Valley, and he's saying all this stuff, and it's like, wait, how do you know all that? Oh, Javier told me. Like, he controls the narrative always.
Right.
So yeah, I think that she's got information from Javier. I think she's seen that. As far as the phone call, and this is one of those times where the usual crowd will say that I'm being biased, like the Robert being short thing. So the second interview we heard, the one from October 25th, was after that. She didn't bring anything up about Robert. She doesn't have any suspicion about Robert.
Right.
Also, she mentions that Brandon Kugler Harrison also talked to him, had the same experience. We heard Brandon's interview, who mentioned that phone call. He didn't say anything about it being like that. Like, and again, I don't think that she's like intentionally doing anything. I think it was maybe a short, weird, awkward phone conversation, and maybe that's the case. But years later, when it's like, oh, the police are now telling me he's the one that killed your sister. Now I'm looking back at that conversation, and now it sounds really, really bad.
Right. Which is what any of us would do. I mean, I think that seems like the most human thing to do. So let's talk about Ron for a second. People definitely curious when we're going to be hearing from him, wondering, when we're going to get into the Ron stuff, just because he's been coming up so much as we have dived into the family through Tiffany. So just some eagerness there to learn more about him and what the investigation into him was like. I don't know where I just wanted to kind of put that out there to acknowledge it.
I think this week,
Okay.
So I've been kind of wrestling. You asked me last night, like, what is there a good closer, because what's the episode going to be about? And I've been doing a bunch of research on a bunch of different angles this week, and I'm struggling with which direction to go. And I think so. We have interviews with Tanya and Drew that I want to make sure are heard, but particularly the one with Drew it's like a good interview. The sounds good, but it doesn't really add a whole lot of value there as far as to the investigation. But a lot of Ron has also been brought up. So I was looking at a lot of stuff from Ron, and I've got an interview with Ron from 2018 that's super interesting, that does conflict and confirm some different things. So I think I think what I'm going to do is make this week's episode about Ron.
Okay.
So we can answer those questions just as you brought up, and then I'll probably put Tanya and Drew's interviews out as bonuses, which I may do later today or tomorrow, which will be yesterday for those if you're listening to this on Friday, because I definitely want the family's voices to be heard, but I also don't want to put out a 40-minute episode where it's like, well, you heard them, but it's not helping us move things forward. So I think that's the route I'm going to go, or maybe a combination of Tanya and Ron on Sunday and Drew as a bonus on Thursday. But
Okay.
I'm still figuring that out. But yeah,
Okay,
but Ron is on the list for very soon, so we can just start checking these things off.
Great. And Montana in the chat, I just want to acknowledge, I hear what you're saying. You're sort of saying, the difference between Javi being a source of information and a primary source of information, versus like actively controlling the narrative. Like, that implies that he has a direction that there may have been more intent than originally there was. It's I hear that.
Well, I want to be clear. I'm not saying Javi has any involvement in this crime, but in my opinion, he definitely did have intent and control. I mean, we watch how his story changes all the way up to trial, where he is very much projecting the narrative that Robert and Christian did this. Okay. That's just my opinion about it, but to me, it is not as innocuous as just he was the source everybody was coming to. But he was very much, with the police, with the friend group, with Becky's friends that he didn't even know, with the sisters, with everybody. He's sharing all this stuff and is definitely pushed this narrative. Him saying, "Oh, when Robert tells the police, like, yeah, well, Javier told me that she was in a wheelbarrow," and then Javi then says, "Oh no, I didn't tell him that. I didn't even know that." To me, yeah, he's, in my opinion, that's not. I'm not saying that's indicating he's guilty. But I feel, I'll just say this. I didn't misspeak. I chose those words intentionally, that I believe that he is controlling the narrative, in my opinion.
Understood. Sarah wants to know, can you confirm Ron was the biological father of Drew, Tanya, and Becky?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Gotta give a quick shout out to Erica Miller for sending me this. Okay. Jennifer and Kristen and Kim and Jason do want to talk more. Many other people do want to talk more about this discrepancy in the money that we hear about from Tiffany versus what we've heard in past episodes about what the amounts were. I'm going to read Jennifer G's just to kind of help sum up it. Jennifer says, the money doesn't add up from what we heard in very early episodes. The $10K that John received and gave to his ex-wife is consistent with maybe the sort of $12K that we were talking about and hearing that Tiffany's mom said, you know, that Vicky said she was planning on doing that. Is consistent, but the amounts Vicky received aren't. Didn't we initially hear something about $175,000? Now there's a $50,000 amount in Vicky's account. How does this affect the theory of Vicky being murdered to avoid paying out the rest of the retirement settlement? How are you feeling about those numbers in terms of like what we're hearing from Tiffany?
So just to kind of backtrack, we heard from John's ex-wife that in October of the previous year that John had got that Vicky had got $10,000 from Ron, and that they used that to pay the debt that John owed to his ex-wife. And then she said there was another $175,000 coming. So that's where, or no, I don't know if she said the amount. I think she said there's another large amount coming. So we heard that from John's ex-wife. That payment, I know Tiffany thought it was 12 or whatever, but that's in the bank records. We see in the bank records, a check for $10,000 from Ron, and then a check out for $10,000. Like that 100% was $10,000. It came in, went out from Ron to Cindy, the ex-wife. Then we heard from, so now we have this lingering, John's ex says that they have another large sum of money coming from Ron. Then we hear from John's boss, Ted Rutherford, who says that John was telling everyone that they had $175,000 coming. And another coworker said the same thing, that he was saying there was $175,000 that they had coming. They didn't know what it was coming from. They thought maybe an inheritance. So that's where we got the $175,000 from. It was like, it seemed to corroborate what Cindy said, that they had more money coming. At the same time, you have John telling people that they have $175,000 coming. Those seem to mesh together. Now we hear that Ron told Tiffany that there's this $50-some thousand amount that he'd already given Vicky, but it's in some other bank account. I don't, and the problem is we're dealing with a game of telephone. So if what Tiffany said is 100% accurate, it seemed like is Ron lying? I've never seen any indication. We've never seen that there was this extra account anywhere. And I don't think it came up in trial about there being another account anywhere. I don't think it's true. But did Tiffany misunderstand her dad or misremember, or not her dad? Ron is not her dad. Did she misunderstand him? Did she misremember what he had said? Or did he actually say that? We don't know the answer to that, but it doesn't seem that, and it's weird. Like, she got the money and it's in an account, but she didn't do paperwork, so she doesn't have access to it. And it's just like, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
Like, I don't know what scenario that would equal that. And if somebody else does, let me, either in the chat or Janet or Zach, let me know. But I can't imagine in my mind a scenario where that happens, where he paid the money, because we see what it looks like when he paid the money. He paid the $10,000 and it was just a check that went right into her account.
Right. Yeah, that whole part was very confusing to me too. And it was very interesting to hear her perception that it wouldn't have even been that much money, but because she left it untouched, it accrued a ton of interest, making it far more valuable. And I think that piqued the interest of other folks too, other listeners who were like, wow, that, without necessarily being able to put too fine a point on what that means, the idea that you think you're giving your ex-wife this smaller amount and you think you've handed it over to her, but it turns out that she didn't take it and it accrued all this interest, and now you're giving her way more money than you thought you were going to be giving her. Is that a change in like circumstance almost that could prompt, as you talk about, what changed in this situation?
I don't know. It's one of the things that the police should have dug deep into, because so in that circumstance, it means that he, when they got divorced, paid the money right then, and it went into an account for her that she had to put it. But then over the years, it accumulated interest to get to this larger amount, and she's never tapped into it. I suppose that, if it's in some kind of trust or something like that, that's possible. It would certainly be interesting to find out, like, if she then dies, then does it go back to him? But again, what I keep coming back to is we have an example of what it looks like when Ron pays her some of his settlement. It's a check from Ron
Yeah.
to her that went into her bank account.
Yeah, but if it were going to be, just to play the devil's advocate on that, if you knew that was just sort of I don't know why that would be the preliminary payment, that you would just go, yeah, I'm going to pay you. I mean, again, this is total speculation on my part. Like, why don't you quiet down? Here's 10,000. Like, this is evidence that the rest is going to come to you or what have you. I could see a scenario in which you say, well, I'm not going to write a check for $50,000. Like, we'll open an account for that. Here's $10,000. I'm going to write you a check. But in the meantime, that doesn't, we'll set up an actual account so I can just transfer the money over, so it's not a check or something. I could see that circumstance changing.
And the way I understood what she was saying was that part happened years before, right? Because it accumulated all this interest.
Yeah.
So like I don't know. I don't know. And again, this is something like, it's a big deal. I think they looked at the fact that Ron lives 11 hours away and his alibi being at his house during that time. So they're like, well, there's no reason to look any further into this. Yeah. And I don't, there are other scenarios that could be relevant that means, like, track it down, figure it out. Don't have blinders on. We need to, and I don't know that we're ever going to get the answers to that. Right. I want to do a much more deep dive than I've done so far into the finances from the settlement and stuff like that. But if that was the case, then that money, does it exist? Does it go to her next of kin? Did it go back to Ron? I don't know.
Okay. So yeah, there are a lot of questions about sort of what did happen to that money, what we find out about it, whether Ron was allowed to keep it, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to just sort of make a blanket statement that we've just established that we just don't know enough yet as you continue to research the case. And I'm sure we'll be looking more deeply into that in just a moment. And Megan, I know you had said, it would be great to have a quick and straightforward breakdown of the financial situation. I think it's clear we've established we just don't have that yet. But it's something we would all benefit from. And same with Kate, asking about, like, how would he know what her account was and how would he access it, and how could he find out what remained? All of that stuff is sort of still up in the air.
Yeah, that's another good point to that, is if that's the case, if it's Ron paid $20,000, for example, right, into an account 15 years ago, and it accumulated all this interest. Once he put in an account for her, he wouldn't, like, how would he have access to know how much is in that account? Like, I don't know. And I don't think there's questions about this, but while we're on the topic of money, do you have anything about John's money and work in your questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay, then we'll let you keep going.
Okay. I'm just sort of living in Ron land right now. Okay. And then Ron as a possible source of information. That's another thing that's been coming up. For example, Sarah says, did Tiffany or any of the other sisters still have connections in Pinyon Pines who could have been feeding them information about the crime scene? Could Ron have been the sister's source of information? And Kate said, like, do we know how Ron found out about the murders the night they happened?
We're going to find all that out this week. Okay. By the way, hey, there's your great last questions.
Sorry.
Had only I had known.
Well, I mean, I have all this. Yeah, I had all this Ron stuff up top.
But this is convincing me more. The people are asking these questions that I think
sure.
it's time to hear from Ron.
Okay, great. Okay, getting into some Robert stuff. Megan says, and we talked about this early in the podcast, and it definitely bears repeating for sure. I'm so glad you said this, Megan. Does it seem odd that they are trying to use Robert's knowledge of the wheelbarrow as guilty knowledge when several neighbors had witnessed the wheelbarrow and they probably don't know everyone the neighbors told about that? We often hear about holdback evidence in crimes, but it seems like this shouldn't qualify given the fact that the crime scene was witnessed by neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous that they use it. And, I think that we've proven pretty effectively that Robert could have... He says he got the information from Javier. They say, well, Javier didn't even know, nobody knew. But yeah, we were Randy Paulson, Tim Summerly, other neighbors that were up at the crime scene. Several of the neighbors all said they knew that Jim Ellis, I think, all knew there was a body in a wheelbarrow. Javier was up there. And we have what 3 or 4 of Javier's friends that all say Javier told them the body was in the wheelbarrow in those first couple of days. So yeah, it's not even holdback evidence at all, because the information was out there. It was out there to everyone. Plus you have Javier's dad that was out there and investigating things. Ron had inside information, which you're going to hear on Sunday, would kind of go back to your last question about the call he got was from his buddy Jeff Bumpancero. And he knew everything that was going on right from the beginning. So yeah, I don't think it was. And again, one of the things that convinced me early on that this is a very likely potential wrongful conviction was that little clip off mic of Robert during his first interview, where the officer tells him that, we don't want rumors going around, blah, 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 blah. Like, people are saying her body's in a wheelbarrow and this and that. And we hear Robert saying, wait, so was her body? I don't remember the exact words, but it was something to the extent of, wait, was she not in a wheelbarrow? Like, to me, like, just as I said with, it wasn't Gray, it was Josh Aroney, I think, that, we hear, like, to me, that was, it was convincing, like, that was genuine surprise and was really wanting information, which to me indicated that he didn't know what was going on. But
yeah,
in regards to the question, I don't think that
just shouldn't be a gotcha. To me, that shouldn't be a gotcha.
Yeah.
And Teresa, I see your point in the chat. No, I'm not saying that you would have to know the neighbors to know that. I'm just saying, like, once a handful of people know, and by the way, all due respect to the police, but the sheriff's department, but like, I have no faith that they would think to tell the neighbors, it's very important that you not tell anyone about this.
Right.
This is going to be key information that only the killer and all of you would know. So please don't tell your daughter, who goes to the same high school. Like, it's like a contamination effect. I have no idea whether that is where he heard it or anything like that. I just think once you have a contamination like that, it's just not fair to hold that anybody to account. You know what I mean? Whether it's Robert or someone else. Anyway.
Well, yeah, and the point is that they're making it out as though it was a big secret and no one knew, but Robert knew, and therefore he had guilty knowledge, when in fact lots of people knew, including, from what we heard from literally everyone. Javier also knew who Robert says told him.
Right. Karen says, speaking of this, the part of the conversation, excuse me, Karen says, the part of the conversation about Robert and the potential threats to kill Becky, Karen just points out, like, well, I don't think Javi ever told the police anything like that. Did he? He never said anything about Robert threatening Becky directly to the police.
No. And we never hear anything like that until, he's already been arrested.
Right. One of the things that came up also, Kate pointed out, and I think there's been some chat about it off the actual follow-up post, but in Facebook in general in the group, is this question about when Tiffany did speak to Robert, and that perhaps there's been some discovery that maybe they talked on the 21st and not the 18th. I saw some chat here in the live about why would Robert pretend not to know about Becky dying, and if that's the case, doesn't that look strange or suspicious? Again, that sort of speaks to a 2018 interview. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's the same thing we talk about. As I mentioned earlier, Tiffany had all that information when she had her October 25th interview. The phone records do indicate the call from Robert to Tiffany, or for Tiffany to Robert, occurred on the 21st. So it was the day after her first. So in her first interview, she wouldn't have known any of that as far as like what Robert's reaction was on the phone, because it was the next day when she talked to Robert, according to the phone records. But then, a month later when she talked to police, she had already had that conversation and had that information, and it wasn't important enough to bring up. It wasn't, it didn't stand out enough. And that's exactly what I was saying kind of at the top of the show, that, but then, if you go 12 years later, now Robert's been arrested for the second time and is just a couple months away from standing trial. Now all this new information comes out about stuff that had happened way back then that was never mentioned to the police for 12 years until that point. So
that's another, That's also a case of, like, I don't know what the utility would be in Robert pretending that he didn't know when everyone knew he knew. Like, I don't know what that would solve for him as a killer. I don't know what that takes care of for him. It would be a huge mistake that I don't see has an upside.
Yeah, and the only thing we have that we can like confirm or deny is that she said that Brian Kugler Harrison talked to him same day and had the it was the exact same way with him, and we see where Brandon talked about that conversation, and it's not he's saying that.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into a couple John things. Yeah, definitely some question around credit card debt. You know, the people that are potentially calling that Tiffany suspects are credit card folks. The conversation with the employer about the $60,000 to $70,000 and being paid under the table to avoid having to make payouts. I think there's just a general, like Sarah and Allison kind of brought up those factors. I saw something about that in the live chat as well. Just wondering how you're feeling about John and the money. And I know you wanted to talk about it anyway.
Yeah, well, the thing that I was going to talk about is, and I will quickly address somebody that said in the YouTube chat that in regards to you saying what would the utility be, and Robert saying that he didn't know about the death, should it would be to distance himself, but like I don't
But
see how
everyone
that's
knew he'd already talked to the police. And
yeah, he had already
everyone
talked
knew
to the
that
police
he
and
had,
told
like,
them about it.
Javi and
Like, who
anyway.
was he trying to convince that he didn't know?
Yeah.
But as far as like John is, there's a lot of questions. Like people said they don't think that he actually made 60 to 70,000 with his employer, and then question about like why he would work. You know, some people had said, well, yeah, but he's independent contractor, so just because he got paid that 60 to 70,000, you know, he had other expenses and stuff from it. You got to understand. So most people know this. I don't think everybody does, but before I was a fireman, I was a contractor, and I continued my business as a contractor through years of being a fireman. And I had contracts exactly like this. And those property management contracts are great because you don't have to buy materials. It's literally they supply everything, and they're just paying you an hourly rate for your labor, but you're not an employee, so they just pay you straight cash. Now, the downside of being an independent contractor, Tiffany used the term getting paid under the table, and I had a conversation with a couple people on the Facebook page about that. Like he wasn't being paid under the table. Under the table means I'm going to have Zach come over and do some work for me, and I'm just going to give you cash and not tell anybody that I did it. Whereas Ted Rutherford, they paid him a check as a contractor and then gave him a 1099 afterwards. So he got, so there are not a lot of expenses and stuff added on top of that when you have a property management contract like that. First of all, now the tax burden is much higher when you're paying extra 7% of taxes when you're an independent contractor. But that's the thing, is John wasn't paying taxes. That's why he had all the tax liens. That's why he wasn't using bank. That's why he would take his check and cash it. That's why the bank is in Vicky's name and not his name. The house is in Vicky's name and not his name, because essentially, I think people have an image of like what the IRS does as far as in enforcement, because they think that, well, he's not paying his taxes, they're going to get him. They don't really, especially somebody, you know, John small potatoes to the IRS. So what they would do is, because a 1099 was filed and Rutherford's company was able to pull, you know, the lady in his office was able to pull the file out and show the 1099. That means now the IRS knows that he was given enough, you know, that he was paid this much money and he owes these taxes. But my guess is John never filed a tax return, because if he filed a tax return, he needed to pay those taxes. So what he would do is take the check and go, because, you know, people had said too that well, you said he doesn't have a bank, but they said his boss said that he got an account at Bank of America because the other banks wanted to hold the checks. Well, what that means is, because Bank of America is the bank that issued the checks, that if he cashes them there, they can verify immediately that the funds are available and they'll release the cash to him immediately. As opposed to if I take that check to a different bank, especially back then when you didn't have the computer systems you have now, they would say, okay, well, we're going to hang on. We're not going to give you the money for this until it clears the other bank, so we know that the money's actually there. So, like, yeah, I don't know if he even set up an account, but he started banking at Bank of America, which just means that he went there to cash the checks. And by cashing them for the IRS, so the first thing they'll try to do is they will come after you. They'll send you letters. They'll want to garnish your wages. Well, he doesn't have wages because he's a contractor, so they can't garnish wages. He doesn't unemployed by anyone. So then they will put a lien on any real property you have. He doesn't own any property. Then they'll put a lien on your tax return. So if he ever files a tax returns, he'd owe him that money. And this can go on for decades, and sometimes inevitably, like forever. Like for the IRS to actually, for him, for his $60,000 or $70,000 a year, to say we're going to pursue criminal charges or whatever against you, it's just not going to happen. Point being, it, you know, because people are like questioned. Somebody, like even the live chat, said, "Well, I don't think that he actually made 60 or 70." He did. They have a 1099. They have financial records. They were paying him that much money. We just don't know where that money was going. Some people mentioned like online gambling. I don't think so, because that would require you to have the money in a bank account to be able to link to he have a large amount of cash somewhere. I think it's possible that he had cash somewhere. I don't know. There's some more interviews and stuff that I'm trying to figure out how to get out here, but it sounds like there are more people than just Tiffany who think that John had a very controlling relationship over Vicky. So I don't know what that situation looked like, but it sure seems to me that John was making a lot, that he was bringing home a lot of cash, and we don't know where that cash was going.
Yeah, I mean, if it's not a check getting written out to credit card and they're calling because, I mean, I get we don't know that that's what those calls were. That was Tiffany's suspicion, which I thought seemed credible. And for folks who, I just want to say quickly, because I see stuff happening in the chat. Like, I want to make clear that I don't find Tiffany incredible. I don't find her sketchy. I don't feel that way about her at all. Everything that she says, I think, comes from a place of working with the information that she had with the time. I think it's entirely possible for everyone who was interviewed in 2018 that time has passed and things affect your memories. And maybe her memory is crystal clear and it was super weird. Her conversation with Robert was super weird and it just didn't come up. For me, I just don't know what to do with that yet. So that's all I'm saying about that.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is probably it was an awkward, weird conversation, and that was the end of it. And then years later, he gets arrested, and now it's turned into more than that. Which is still, by the way, nothing in that conversation was like indicating that Robert killed her.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like even if what she said is true, and it was she's 100% remembering it perfectly correct, that he was just like, oh well, I didn't know, whatever. That doesn't make him a murderer. You know, I'm not trying to use that as like a free pass for Robert from the crime. It's not evidence of anything.
Yeah.
But it doesn't track with the 12 years that built up to that. It doesn't track with what Brandon said.
Right. Chandler had sort of asked, following up on the conversation we had last week about potential medical issues, knowing that obviously HIPAA protects records and things like that. But, was, again, as everyone's trying to figure out where the money was going, was wondering, like, could there be something medical that we don't know? Not just for the purpose of like understanding Vicky and kind of what was happening with her, but also a question of where money could be going. Like, could money have been going out to pay medical bills and we just wouldn't know that because of HIPAA or?
I guess it's possible if the police never went down that route. We never see, we don't see anything from the family, the daughters, Rob, anybody indicating that anybody had any medical issue. In fact, what Tiffany says is that she wouldn't go to the doctor. So yeah, anything's possible, but we don't have anything to indicate that was the case.
Yeah. That takes us into, again, just, wondering about these other interviews as Tiffany's talking about, they all went to the police station. They were interviewed, her grandpa, the aunts, Caroline also wants to know the same thing. Like, do we have information that we can apply from those resources as well?
Not that I've seen, no.
I mean, how can that be?
Also, real quick, just a side note off mic. You said, I was reading the chat. You asked about grandparents, information from grandparents. Is that what you asked?
Oh, yeah. I just when, every time we hear an interview where someone who is on record talks about the other people they were with also being interviewed, the natural question is, and where are those interviews? Do we have them? And it seems like very often the answer is we actually don't have them, but maybe they'll
Okay.
surface somewhere.
So let me, Kelly, put this as my answer to that. Yeah, there's not a lot there. We do have, so she mentioned, Tiffany mentioned the friend Janice that that her mom had been in contact with recently. There is an interview with Janice, but it was like at the crime scene the day of, like on the 18th. It's a real short, like 7-minute interview is all that is. And we find out from Janice that she hadn't talked to Vicky in years. Like it had been a long time. They didn't really have, she didn't like John, she didn't like Ron, and for a long time.
Okay, well, I know we are hopefully looking forward to some more Ron information next week. There's a lot happening in the chat. I don't think we have time to get to it all because it's sort of its own thing. If you want to find out what that's all about, feel free to join us for the YouTube chat. That is very easy to do. You just, find out, like join the Facebook page and then also go on YouTube. We try to stream at 9 Pacific every Wednesday. When that changes, we announce it beforehand on the Facebook page. It's a very active, busy world in the YouTube chat. And if you want to be a part of it, you can.
Yep. Noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific time every Wednesday. If you subscribe to the Truth and Justice YouTube channel, and if you hit the little subscriber notification bell, then should let you know when we go live. And yeah, I'll just, there's in the chat, the last thing we'll talk about before we close things out is people are asking, like, do we know that Tiffany actually called Robert, and why would she call Robert? Yes, we do know that she called him because it is in the phone record. She called him on the 21st.
Right.
The why is also very simple because she said she talked to Javier on the 20th. It was after so Jacob was interviewed, and we hear him actually talking to Drew in the hallway during that interview. But they all talked that she has the dates kind of mixed up, but she talked Javier, and then so the next day, then she called Robert. That's why she called Robert. So that did happen, and that is the why. Make sure you stay tuned to listen to the promo for the trailer for the new season of True Crime Bullshit. After the credits, tune in on Sunday, where we will be. I think it's been officially decided, which actually lowers my blood pressure a little because I've been trying to figure out what to do this week. So we will hear from Ron Friedley, Becky's dad, this Sunday. Make sure you tune in. Thank you all for joining us on the YouTube. Thank you very much to all of our patrons for all of your support and for joining us in the hour pre-show. And with all that, thanks, Zach.
Thank you,
man. Thanks,
Zach,
Janet.
don't let Bob make you clean up that water. I want you to promise that you're not going to get involved in his mess for even a second.
I'll try not to.
Okay.
All right. No more from Janet. We'll talk to you guys next week. So yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Stop on audio. I'm going to stop the stream. YouTube, thank you very much, everybody. Drew, this is off the we're done recording, but Drew wanted to know, or Montana wanted to know, if Drew was already in the US when the murder happened. No, she was not, but she was a couple days later. She was there. And now
This poor family.